How to sew the pretty little bag, part of the Wrapped in Style kit collection from Amber Makes. Start by cutting out the fabric from the panel. Cut out all the pretty little bag pieces from the panel. You'll need the front outer, the back outer, 2 side gussets and a base gusset. You need to use your own fabric now to cut the lining pieces, so simply place them on top and cut round them to make a front lining and a back lining, 2 side gusset linings and 1 base gusset lining. Making the outer and lining of the bag. Take the base gusset outer and one of the side gusset outers. Place them right sides facing along the right hand edge of the base gusset. Then take a tape measure and mark a point 1/4 of an inch down from the top and 1/4 of an inch up from the bottom. You're going to sew it together between these seams, these marks, reverse stitching at either end. Once this is sewn, repeat this on the other side of the base gusset to attach the side gusset to the other side, leaving 1/4 of an inch unstitched at the top and bottom. This makes the long gusset strip. Now take the front outer and place one of the side outers right sides facing on top. Pin together at the top, then pin together at the bottom, making sure that seam stays pressed open, and pop a pin in the centre. You're now going to stitch it together all the way down the side, but stopping at that seam. So put it under your machine, reverse stitch at the beginning, then stitch it together all the way down the side. Make sure that seam stays pressed open. When you get to the seam, so work slowly now, stop when your needle is in the seam, leave the needle down, lift the presser foot, turn the fabric around so that the base gusset is now going to be stitched. Pin it into place at the end and then pin it into place in the centre. Now arrange the fabric so that you're only stitching down the base. Move the side out of the way, lower the presser foot and stitch the bottom of the base gusset to the bottom of the front outer, all the way down until you reach the other seam. And again, go slowly now so that your needle stops exactly on the seam. Raise the presser foot with the needle down and pin the other side gusset to the other side of the front outer. Pin it at one end and then pop a pin in the centre. Arrange the gusset so you move the base out of the way, lower the presser foot so you're only stitching through this side gusset, and then stitch all the way to the end. Reverse stitching to finish. Now the front is attached, you now need to sew the back outer to the other side of the gusset. So this is done in exactly the same way. Pin it together at the top and at the bottom. Remember, you've left that 1/4 of an inch unstitched, which makes it easy to pivot round the corners. So sew it together down the side, round the bottom, up the other side in exactly the same way. That's the outer finished. Now make the lining in exactly the same way, only this time leave a 3-inch turning gap unstitched in the bottom of the centre of the bottom seam. Assembling the bag. Cut the ribbon that you're going to use for the tie in half to make 2 pieces. You can use ribbon or cotton tape for this. I used a pretty spot ribbon. Now measure and mark the centre, or you can just fold it, of the top edge of the front outer by placing the seams together, and then make a little crease in the centre and pop a pin in there. Now take one piece of ribbon and place this at the centre mark, right sides facing. If you've got a double-sided ribbon, it doesn't matter, but if you've only got a print on one side, make sure it's right sides facing. Now measure 1/2 inch down from the top of the ribbon and pop a pin in that position. Now pin the ribbon so it's centrally placed over that centre pin, and that 1/2 inch is sticking up above the raw edge of the fabric bag. Now to make sure the ribbon stays straight while you're sewing it in place, put another pin a little bit further down. This is because sometimes the ribbon can move a little bit when you're sewing it. Now tack it into place across the top, and using a long stitch on your machine on that bit lower down section, repeat that to tack the other piece of ribbon to the back of the bag. Now take the lining that you made earlier, and folding the ribbon to the bottom, place the outer inside the lining so that they're right sides facing. Now you need to pin it together all the way around the top. Start by matching those side gusset seams and pin it together at those points. Make sure those seams stay pressed open to reduce the bulk in the top of the bag, as you've got a lot of layers of fabric there. Pin it together at the other side seam. Then put a pin in at the last side's gusset seams. Now pin it together all the way around the top edge. Make sure that ribbon is tucked right down, because you don't want to catch the loose ends of it in your stitching. Just make sure it's pushed right down. Tacking it into place a little bit further down that you've just done will help with this. Now sew it together all the way around the top edge. Once that's done, all the way round, put your fingers inside, take hold of the outer and pull it out through the turning gap in the lining to turn the whole bag right sides out. Push your fingers inside to push out those seams. And push out the lining seams. Then fold the edges of the turning gap under by 1/4 inch and pin them together. Now sew together along the turning gap by hand or machine. Once that's done, push the lining inside the outer. You can now remove these tacking stitches that you put in place to just attach the ribbon to keep it straight. This is why if you use the longest stitch on your machine for this, it makes them much quicker to undo. Now fold the lining to the inside just so that the top seam is right on the top edge. If you roll it between your fingers, you can get that lying nice and flat. The ribbon needs to be facing upwards. It will help here to get a neat finish if you press the edges. Now once you've pressed all around the top edge, you need to top stitch all the way around. That's about 1/8 of an inch from the top, adding the handles to your bag. Now your bag is top stitched all the way along the top, you can add the handles. I've used eyelets here because they make a nice neat little edge to the bag, and it's nice to add a bit of extra hardware. So on the front outer, to get the positioning for these, measure 2 inches in from that left gusset seam and mark this with a dot. Now measure 1/2 inch down from the top, and where these points meet, place a dot. Repeat this on the other side by measuring 2 inches in from the right gusset seam, and again 1/2 inch down from the top, and mark where this point is. Now you need to place your eyelets into where this hole is positioned. So to do this, make a little cut, using a seam ripper is ideal. Make a little cross by cutting in all 4 directions. These are just tiny, just enough to get the eyelet through. Make them very small to start with. You can always make them bigger later. Now take the piece of the eyelet that's got the longest shank on, and from the front, push that through the fabric, through the lining, the outer and the lining. Then take the other piece, the other half, and place that on top. Now your eyelet kit will come with a fitting. They're all a little bit different, but they most work in a similar way. Place the bottom of the eyelet onto the fixing and then give it a good hammer. I usually just put a wooden board between this. 3 or 4 times is about right to get it to go in. Your eyelet kit will give you directions for this. Once you've put that eyelet in, put all 4 eyelets in exactly the same way, 2 at the front and 2 at the back, using those same measurements. Now take a length of tape. I've used cotton tape for my handles, but you can use ribbon. Cut it in half so that you're going to use 1 piece for each handle. Now take 1 short end and from the outside of the bag to the inside, thread it through the eyelet. And then tie the end in a knot. Thread the other end through the other eyelet and tie in a knot. You may need to tie 2 knots in the end, depending on how wide your ribbon or cord or tape is, just so that the knot doesn't come through. But if you find it does come through, just put another knot in on top of the other one. So now tie the ends in a knot, and that's 1 handle. Repeat this to add the handle to the other back of the bag in the same way. Now to neaten the ends, just fold them in half and snip them from the outer to the folded edge. And this puts a little V. So fold them in half, snip them from the folded edges to the fold, and snip the V into the back handle as well. This stops them from fraying and also gives it a pretty edge as well. Now repeat this with the ends of the ribbon. And then repeat it to snip off that little V from the other end of the ribbon. And your bag is now finished. So all you need to do is pop your gift inside, and then to hold it secure, take the ribbon that's at the top, tie it together, tie a little bow in it, and your pretty little gift bag is all finished and ready to fill with lovely little things.